what is the future of these cities? What is it that we will be celebrating 5 years hence? Unfortunately, because we are all so busy fighting status quo, there are very few future designers and architects in India. And it is indeed a pleasure to have Karunaji with us, who is one of the very minuscule. You can basically count them on your fingertips. She is like a future architect and a future envisioner for the cities. He has an extensive body of work. And what I really marvel about her work is that planning for a futuristic city is like planning for an open heart surgery. You have a city which is not a greenfield city. It's a working, thriving system with a whole bunch of baggage and history. Now, within that, how do you impose or superimpose a futuristic vision and make sure that 5 years hence, when the city size is 1.5 times in terms of population or something like that, we do not fail. So, Karunaji, cities post COVID, how do you look at the future of cities panning out? Do share your views.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kochar. Thank you for inviting me today. Am I audible? Yeah. So thank you very much for having me today. It's indeed a pleasure to talk to many practitioners and a diverse group of people. I was given to understand you have close to 1,000 people today, so which is actually a great pleasure to interact with. So let me give a very macro perspective in terms of what we are likely to see very soon. My talk would be based on two articles that I read in the last week. The first article is from New York Times. And this article says, will the cities disappear totally post-COVID? The second article is by World Economic Forum. And it says that it is not to do with the location of a city. It's not to do with the location of a city, but it's to do with the behavior of people inside the city that tells us categorically whether we have COVID adaptation or not. So these are the two critical articles. So let me start with the first one. I said the New York Times one said that will cities disappear? I'm saying that it will never happen. Cities are here to stay. Now, why am I saying that? If you go back and check what happened in the past pandemics that have swept away the world in perhaps the past century or a little more, you saw that when the bubonic plague came, cities understood that they needed to have underground drainage. When cholera and typhoid came, cities were forced to look at their sewerage systems. And when tuberculosis happened, cities had no option but to understand how to get clean air. So that's when the building codes of many cities, many buildings have been changed, and the cities have been designed in such a way that air flows. So typically when you go back, take Spanish flu, any of these pandemics that have devastated the world have contributed positively to city making. They have shaped cities, but they have shaped cities only in the physical infrastructure. Now, coming to COVID, I'm compelled to say that COVID has given us enough reason to look at not the physical infrastructure of a city, but the soft infrastructure of a city. What do I mean by soft infrastructure? COVID is forcing us to look at the governance aspects. COVID is forcing us to look at our decision making. COVID is forcing us to look at our systems and processes. COVID is forcing us to look at the citizen centricity of our cities and governance. So if COVID is shaping our cities, it's shaping us not in the physical infrastructure aspect, but in the soft infrastructure governance aspect. Now, that is the first article that I read in NY Times. Now, let me come to World Economic Forum's article that says that its COVID adaptation is nothing to do with the location. It's to do with the behavior of citizens. So what does it mean? It means that you could be in London or you could be in Lhasa. You could be in a Hong Kong, or you could be in Hanoi. You could be in maybe New York, or maybe in Nebraska. Nothing, your location is immaterial, because the people inside those locations, how they behave, will determine COVID adaptation. In your speech and also in Dr. Ramchandran's speech, both of you have touched this aspect that we complied. When our prime minister announced categorically that we're going to go in for a lockdown, everyone complied. We sat at home, we wore our masks, we maintained our social distancing. Now, many people around the world, some of my colleagues across the world, were surprised that educated intellectuals have very silently complied with the request of the prime minister. So it is a behavior that matters. Now, coming to a nuanced understanding of what we did, which is very important for cities and adaptation, we have done three very important things. The first thing we did was we repurposed very intelligently our institutions and our people. If you see what was repurposed across the world, it was basically the drugs and medicines that were repurposed. When I checked with some of my doctor friends across the world, and I'm sure you also would have seen, that the drugs meant for epilepsy, the drugs may be meant for some other neurological condition, have been repurposed to treat COVID. But in India, what happened? We have repurposed our institutions. For instance, take IIT Delhi. IIT Delhi, that was doing cutting edge research in artificial intelligence, machine learning, was repurposed, and it quickly came out with test kits for COVID in the shortest of time. They have also carried out material research and came out with PPE kits that can breathe. So we have repurposed institutions. That's the greatest thing that happened in our cities and in our country. Then we have repurposed people also. Like the city that I come from, there is a very higher educational institution called IIIT, and the professors from there went to government hospitals and they started doing statistical analysis of COVID patients, putting them and segregating them, putting them in different buckets for their diagnosis and prognosis and treatment, which was repurposing people. So this is what India has done as far as repurpose is concerned. The second thing that we have done, this is very important, my friends, why I'm talking about this is, every little thing that I'm saying has happened in cities. And it has happened because of a certain ecosystem that is existing. The second thing we did was we stuck to one concept called heuristic. We never cast anything in stone as far as our research or our, let's say, making our gadgets is concerned. When COVID hit us very badly, Prime Minister asked us to go for ventilator manufacturing. Everybody plunged into making ventilators. But at that time, we discovered that some of the patients were actually dying when they were intubated and attached to ventilators. That's because an already compromised set of lungs were collapsing when high pressure oxygen was given to them. So what happened in our cities is we started looking at hybrid machines, machines that were a mix, a kind of hybrid machine between a ventilator and a respirator. This is what I call innovating on the go. This is what we have done. And it happened in cities because of an existing innovation ecosystem. That's the second thing that happened with us. And the third and the most important thing which we did was we said, let's stretch our imagination and let's stretch our resources. That's something that we have done very brilliantly and beautifully. Now, that is as far as what we have done. Now, going forward, what we have to do. Post-COVID, there are three important things that I'd like to share. The first one is about technology. We've heard in the past presentations too how technology has helped. But going forward, our post-COVID cities have to categorically understand how to deploy technological solutions. And that is where I said the softer aspects of governance come in. For instance, in the past, we've always had a conflicting discussion between technology deployment, and sustainable living. For instance, we used to have arguments like, should we have driverless cars or should we drive less cars? Should we have Internet of Things or should we go for interacting with people? Open data or open spaces? These discussions used to happen continuously. But going forward, what is important is our decision makers have to understand the value of technology and how much to use and how to use. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, so COVID times categorically proved that technology has helped us in terms of e-learning, e-virtual working, e-medicine. I thought e-medicine was a pipe dream when Cisco came to India in 2005 and set up their big establishment. I thought it was a pipe dream, but it's happening. And COVID has categorically proved. I thought when our young startups started looking at machine learning and artificial intelligence for diagnosing health problems, I thought we are far way off. But these people have proved today that their technologies have helped. So going forward, our cities, post-COVID cities, will rely quite heavily on the technology. Point one. Now, point two, we all have seen that when cities looked for sustainability, like in maybe JNNURM or even in smart cities or Amrit, we started talking about public transportation and we started talking about dense cities. Now, in COVID times, both have been counterproductive. Public transportation has not helped during COVID. Density and dense cities have not helped. If you look at the number of people traveling, the metro in Bombay, metro in Delhi was carrying 26 lakh people a day, but now it's carrying not even 5 lakhs. So people are afraid to take up public transportation. And therefore, the private transportation is increasing, and we have to, going forward, we need to understand how to strike a balance between the private transportation that is eventually not going to help. So this is the second point. And the third point is about urban health. The most important thing, historically, we talked about health of an economy, economic health, but we never talked about health of people in cities. Now, post-COVID, we need to understand, get down to the brass tacks of what it takes to keep our people in cities healthy. For instance, people in cities have something called, they experience triple disease burden. What is triple disease burden? We have infectious diseases, we have non-communicable diseases like cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, and cancer, and neurological diseases too. The third one is accidents. In the past, we thought infectious diseases are not for the rich, but COVID proved us wrong. We are all better placed in life, but all of us got COVID. Now, the second myth is NCDs. They are called lifestyle diseases. If you're obese, you'll get cancer, you'll get cardiovascular disease. Again, we're proved wrong because in the slums, the incidence of NCDs is very high. Now, accidents. Private vehicles are singularly responsible for accidents. And we need to now get down to the bottom of how do we deal with the triple disease burden in the cities. So as I said, COVID will force us to look at governance, decision-making, systems, be it public health systems or delivery systems. It is going to force us to look at citizen centricity. So as I see, the post-COVID cities will perhaps be better governed cities. We will start looking at systems, processes, and a vision, better vision for cities, a holistic vision for cities. And perhaps the way we have dealt with COVID, India is again going to become a beacon light of hope for the world, not only in managing COVID, but also setting a vision and way ahead for other cities in terms of managing highly congested, highly complex, multiply layered complexities for the world to see and learn from us.
Thank you so much, Karunaji. That is a very thought-provoking speech that you